Racist woman poured acid on a black waitress. Then found out she was a billionaire's wife. The restaurant went dead silent after the scream. A tray clattered to the floor. Plates shattered. The smell of something sharp and burning filled the air. "My face! Oh God, my face!" cried the young black waitress, clutching her cheek as liquid smoke rose from her skin. Every customer froze. Chairs scraped the floor. Some covered their mouths in shock. A woman in a red blazer stood trembling, still holding an empty glass, the one she had thrown. That woman was Margaret Dawson, a wealthy socialite who believed she could treat anyone the way she pleased. And tonight, she'd gone too far. Moments before, she had hissed across the table, "Maybe if you did your job right, girl, I wouldn't have to call your manager." The waitress, Tasha Green, had only smiled, polite and calm, like she'd heard it all before. She had no idea the woman's rage was about to explode. Margaret had grabbed the small glass from her husband's hand, the one filled with clear, dangerous acid used for cleaning jewelry. And before anyone could stop her, she'd hurled it straight at Tasha. Now the room was chaos. Someone shouted, "Call 911!" Another yelled, "She's burning!" But as Tasha fell to her knees, clutching her face, her phone buzzed on the counter. It showed one missed call. From Elliot Green, her husband. The name made the restaurant manager's eyes widen. Because that name wasn't just any name. Elliot Green was the man who had just bought half the city's hotels, including this very restaurant. And Tasha wasn't just a waitress. She was his wife. Margaret stood frozen, her face draining of color, as whispers rippled through the crowd. "Wait, she's Mrs. Green?" Tasha's faint sobs filled the silence, and then the sound of approaching sirens cut through the night. The camera would fade out here, right on Margaret's horrified face, just before everything she thought she knew about the help started to collapse. But that night of horror hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been building, quietly drop by drop, like water filling a glass until one final splash made it overflow. Just 7 days earlier, Tasha Green had walked into that same restaurant with a smile and a purpose. She wore her black apron neatly tied, her curly hair tucked behind her ears, and a calm warmth that made customers instantly comfortable. No one could have guessed that she was the wife of Elliot Green, the man who had just signed the papers to buy the entire restaurant chain. Tasha didn't tell anyone. She wanted to see how people were treated when no one was watching, and that's when she met her. Margaret Dawson, the woman who now stood frozen in shock, realizing she'd just destroyed the face of the billionaire's wife. That night, Margaret had walked into the restaurant for the first time like she owned it. She was known around town, loud, rich, and always dressed to impress. The kind of person who mistook fear for respect. From the moment she sat down, she treated the staff like furniture. "Move that table closer," she ordered. "No, not that close." "Do you even understand instructions?" Tasha had handled it with quiet patience. "Of course, ma'am," she'd said softly, adjusting the table without showing a hint of irritation. But Margaret wasn't satisfied. Something about Tasha's calmness, her poise, her self-control, irritated her. It was as if this waitress didn't know her place. When Tasha served her meal, Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Do you always serve food this slow? Or just when the customers don't look like you?" A few nearby diners turned to look. The room went still. Tasha smiled faintly, steadying her voice. "I'm sorry, ma'am." "We're a bit short-staffed tonight," Margaret laughed. That sharp, fake laugh that stings more than a slap. "Excuses." Typical. From that moment on, Tasha became her target. Every visit that week brought new insults, new humiliations. Margaret would snap her fingers, demand Tasha personally serve her, and then complain about something. Anything. The water. The bread. Even the way Tasha said thank you. But what Margaret didn't realize was that the quiet waitress was keeping notes. Mental notes for her husband's next board meeting. She wanted to change how staff were treated. She wanted kindness, fairness, and respect. Yet fate had something darker in store. Because on the 7th night, when Margaret came in wearing her red blazer and too much perfume, something inside her finally snapped. And that's when the story the world would never forget truly began. The night of the attack started quiet, too quiet for what was coming. It was a Saturday evening. Soft piano music played in the background. Candles flickered on every table, and the smell of garlic butter floated through the air. The restaurant was almost full, and Tasha was moving gracefully between tables with that same calm smile she always wore. But inside, she felt tense. Something in the air felt off. Margaret Dawson had just walked in. She wore a red blazer that screamed for attention and heels that clicked like thunder across the marble floor. Her husband Richard followed behind, clearly uncomfortable, but used to cleaning up the messes his wife made. Tasha saw them enter. Her smile didn't fade, but her heart sank. Every server in the room pretended to be busy. No one wanted to deal with her. But as always, Margaret's sharp voice cut through the chatter. Yes, you, the one with the apron. We meet again. Tasha turned, polite as ever. Good evening, ma'am. Table for two? Margaret's smirk was cold. Don't act like you don't remember me. I hope you brought your brain tonight. Richard sighed under his breath. Maggie. She waved him off. I'm speaking to the help, dear. That word, help, stung the room like a slap. Even the hostess looked down. Tasha nodded softly and led them to their table near the window. She placed the menus down, saying quietly, Let me know when you're ready to order. But as she walked away, Margaret muttered just loud enough for her to hear. I swear, people like her only get these jobs for pity. Tasha froze. Her hands trembled for half a second before she steadied herself. She turned, smiled gently, and said, I'll be back with your drinks. A few tables over, another waitress whispered, How can she stay so calm? No one knew the truth, that the woman they pitied didn't need their sympathy, that she had a penthouse overlooking the city, that she could buy and sell everything in this restaurant 10 times over. But Tasha never bragged. That wasn't who she was. She returned to Margaret's table with 2 glasses, one filled with sparkling water, one with a cleaning solution she had mistaken for mineral water from the staff counter. The bottles looked nearly identical. Tasha placed the glasses down, unaware of the mix-up. Margaret frowned, sniffed the drink, and slammed the glass down. This isn't sparkling. What is this garbage? Before Tasha could answer, Margaret's anger exploded. Are you trying to poison me now? Oh, you'll regret this. She snatched the small glass from Richard's hand, the one he'd been using to clean his jewelry while waiting, and in a flash of rage, she threw it. The clear liquid hit Tasha's cheek with a hiss. The world went silent for one terrible heartbeat. Then came the scream. My face! Customers jumped from their seats. A waiter tripped over a chair. Someone shouted, Call an ambulance! Tasha dropped to her knees, clutching her burning skin. Her apron caught the light, melting slightly where the acid had splashed. Margaret froze. The glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Richard turned white as paper. Maggie, what did you do? But before Margaret could answer, Tasha's phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen glowed bright. Elliot Green. Richard's eyes widened. Wait, Elliot Green? The hotel tycoon? Margaret blinked, confused. What does that have to? Then it hit her. The whisper started. The manager's face went pale. That's his wife, someone gasped. She's Mrs. Green. And in that moment, Margaret Dawson, the woman who thought she was untouchable, felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. Outside, sirens wailed closer. Cameras flashed from phones, and the world she ruled with her money was about to turn against her. The sirens grew louder until red and blue lights flashed across the restaurant's glass walls. People stood outside with phones raised, recording everything. The shattered glass, the panic, and Margaret Dawson standing frozen in the middle of it all. When the paramedics rushed in, Margaret stumbled backward, her voice trembling. I didn't know it was acid. It was just a mistake. But no one believed her. Tasha lay on the floor, trembling, a wet towel pressed gently against her cheek. The acid had burned through a patch of her skin, leaving angry blisters that stung with every breath. But even through the pain, she whispered only one thing. Please, tell my husband I'm okay. The manager nodded, trying to hold back tears. Minutes later, the doors burst open again, and a tall man in a dark coat stormed in. His face was pale with fear, his eyes locked on Tasha. Move, he barked, pushing past the crowd. That's my wife, gasps rippled through the room. Phones turned his way. Everyone recognized him instantly. Elliot Green, the billionaire hotel owner, the man whose name was on every luxury tower in the city. He dropped to his knees beside her, his voice breaking. Tash, baby, can you hear me? She nodded weakly. I'm okay, she whispered. But Elliot's eyes lifted and met Margaret's. For the first time that night, she couldn't speak. She just stood there, her face drained of every trace of color. You, he said quietly, his voice low but dangerous. You poured acid on my wife? I didn't know. I thought she was just a waitress, he snapped. The silence was deafening. Cameras kept rolling. Every word, every tear, every breath was being streamed live by someone's phone. The police officer stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us. Margaret's husband, Richard, covered his face in shame. Please, Elliot, she didn't mean... But Elliot cut him off coldly. Meaning doesn't erase what she did. As the officers led Margaret away, she tried to plead. I didn't know. She didn't say who she was. Elliot looked at her, eyes full of fury and disbelief. You shouldn't need to know someone's name to treat them like a human being. That line echoed through the restaurant. The next morning, that same line was all over the internet. She didn't know who she was. Mrs. Green, rear racist customer, arrested. Millions watched the video. Margaret's face was everywhere. Her outrage, her words, her act. The woman who had once looked down on everyone was now being dragged through every news channel in the country. Her business deals were canceled. Her friends stopped answering her calls. Reporters camped outside her mansion. And still, she couldn't erase the image that haunted her. Tasha's eyes, calm and full of pain, looking up at her even as her face burned. Because deep down, Margaret knew the real fire wasn't on Tasha's skin. It was the one now burning through her own life, and it was just getting started. It had been 3 weeks since the night of the attack. The video had gone viral. The news had replayed it 100 times, and the name Margaret Dawson had become a symbol of cruelty and privilege. Her mansion gates were covered in graffiti. Strangers spat when they saw her on the street. The world she once ruled with arrogance had turned its back on her. And yet, the woman she had hurt most, Tasha Green, had disappeared from the spotlight completely. Until today. Reporters gathered outside St. Clair's Hospital. Cameras pointed at the doors. The media had been buzzing with rumors that Mrs. Green would finally speak. Inside, Elliot held Tasha's hand as nurses removed the last of her bandages. The scars on her cheek were faint but still visible, a reminder of what hate could do. You don't have to face them if you're not ready, Elliot whispered. Tasha smiled softly. No, I have to. Not for me, for everyone who's been treated like they're less. A few minutes later, she stepped onto the hospital steps. The crowd went silent. The woman they thought was broken stood tall, calm, graceful. The same way she had carried herself that night. Her voice was steady when she spoke. I know everyone's waiting for me to talk about what happened. But this isn't just about me. It's about how easy it is to forget kindness. She paused, looking directly into one of the cameras. The woman who did this to me didn't see me. She saw a color, a job, a label. And when people stop seeing others as human, that's when real damage begins. Her words hit harder than any courtroom sentence could. Across the city, screens froze on her face. Calm, scarred, but unbroken. Even Margaret, sitting alone in her dark living room, couldn't look away. She was watching the woman she'd tried to destroy speak with grace instead of hate. Tasha continued, her voice soft but strong. I forgive her. Not because she deserves it, but because I refuse to carry her hate inside me. A hush fell over the crowd. Reporters lowered their microphones. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. And one last thing, Tasha added. The next time you look at someone and think they're beneath you, remember, you might be looking at a queen in disguise. The crowd erupted in applause. Elliot wrapped his arm around her shoulders, proud and emotional. Later that night, the video of her speech went viral too. Not because of pain, but because of power. Margaret Dawson eventually issued a public apology. Her voice cracked as she said, I was wrong. I was blind. But by then, the world had already moved on, not because they forgot her cruelty, but because they remembered Tasha's strength. And though the scars remained, Tasha's grace burned brighter than any flame that had ever tried to destroy her. Because in the end, it wasn't the acid that scarred the world. It was the hate behind it. And love, as always, was the only thing strong enough to heal it. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Share it with someone who still believes kindness is weakness. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Tasha? And if you believe that compassion is stronger than hate, subscribe for more stories that restore your faith in humanity.